Welcome to the Munk Podcast, your sanctuary for self-discovery, personal growth, and emotional healing. I'm your host, Parag Lokande, a shadow coach, spiritual mentor, seeker, poet, and a student of life. This podcast is a heartfelt journey into understanding and embracing your true self. It is designed to help you navigate the complexities of the human experience with wisdom and compassion. Join me on a journey to self-discovery and personal growth as we explore the power of self-healing. Hey everyone, welcome back to episode 36 of the podcast. And today we will be covering the last stage of growth. Life is happening as me. Now, before we get going, a disclaimer that this stage is not my direct experience. At the time of recording this episode, I'm personally navigating the previous stage of life, which is life is happening through me. So I can only imagine or go with what resonates with me when it comes to today's episode. So for me today's episode is more like writing poetry rather than sending you postcards from my journey. Also, before we start unpacking today's episode, I wanted to play a little bit with the idea of why would someone want to even get out of stage 3? Because largely it feels very happy, blissful, and a nice place to be. And you might wonder as to why would someone want to get out of this stage and move towards life is happening as me. Now, I believe that is because the third stage is not without its challenges. The through me stage of life represents a profound shift from egoic control to surrender, where life is as though seen as flowing through you, as like a conduit of higher expression. Hence, this stage is often accompanied by its own unique challenges, and one of the most significant one being the imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome in this context, it's not the same as the imposter syndrome as in lack of self-esteem or lack of confidence. That's the shadow side of the imposter syndrome. The imposter syndrome in this context manifests as an internal conflict between the evolving understanding of yourself as a vessel for life's flow and the old programming that was built on self-doubt, inadequacy, and unworthiness. So at this stage, you're often faced with questions like, who am I to channel this wisdom or power? What if I'm not good enough to fulfill this role? Am I truly a conduit for something greater, or am I just pretending? Sometimes you wonder, am I a vessel, and is that all I'm meant to be? You see, at its core, this form of imposter syndrome arises because the ego struggles to let go of its need for validation and control. Even as you begin to trust in the flow of life, even as you begin to surrender, the transition to seeing yourself as a channel rather than a sole creator of your experiences can feel disorienting and provoke feelings of inadequacy. I call this the soul wound, the wounds of the higher heart, the wounds of the superconsciousness. It's like the soul has its own emotional blocks around having failed to connect with the world, love the world again and again across many lifetimes. And when it finally is able to express itself, when finally the grip of the ego is not so strong, it freaks out. This is also known as all of us having unconscious fears of our own power. You may have heard this discussed around the new age, spirituality or in social media. We all of us on an unconscious level fear our own power. You see, we all have so many gifts, so much sensitivity in us that we have suppressed. And when finally you reach this third stage, all these gifts come online. All that sensitivity starts to become power. And that scares us like hell, literally. You see, I live most of my life in dissociation, which is similar to a zombie. Always living in my head all the time, completely numbing from all the emotions, literally believing that it was some sort of a superpower. So I don't remember having any gifts or anything as such. So when I landed on the third stage, I didn't realize I had various gifts of clairsentience, claircognizance, channeling gifts. Seems like I'm also a psychic, energy healing, gifts of alchemy. A lot of my teachings, in fact, are channeled. So when I look back at what I have written, like I'm often scratching my head as to how did I do that? Every single session that I have with my clients, I'm in awe. And when I'm reflecting back, I'm always wondering, how did I actually do that? Or who did that? Or where does that part of me reside in me? Or can I even access it? Or does it just come online at its own will? You see, in order to carry out the soul's will, the soul needs the ego. Without your ego, we'll all be a vegetable. So on one end, all this is going on. You're trying to come to terms with your personal power. On the other hand, the ego is becoming more and more humble. It becomes humble to the divine will. It recognizes the stupidity of playing God for so long. One's identity has already dissolved to a large extent by the third stage, so the ego does not recognize itself anymore. You see, when I look back at all that I have done in my life, I was a trained accountant, I was a corporate banker, for a long period of time I was a serial entrepreneur. There are so many things that I've done. And while I was identified with my ego then, now when I look back, it feels like a faint memory, like clothes in the closet that don't fit me anymore. You can even say that the ego begins to realize how petty its dreams or ambitions were, not in a cliche way, more over the surrender of that personal will to the divine will, as though feels like being in some sort of a servitude without having any ambitions of its own. So on one end, you're trying to grapple with personal power. On the other end, your ego is becoming more and more humble. You see, on one end, you're trying to claim your power. On the other hand, your ego goes, "Oh wow, really? Am I really worthy of all that power?" It's as though speaking to the higher self and saying, "You still want me to help you after all that me playing God? You think I can really be of any help?" And it is sort of disorienting to an extent when you are at this stage 3 of life's happening through me. And you see, that is why one needs to and must ascend to life is happening as me. Because it's I suppose you don't have a choice in this case, because this is such a disorienting place and you are forever stuck in this loop of questioning yourself, and in some sort of duality as well, you can say. Part of your experience is the higher self, which is realizing all this personal power, and part of your experience in the same body is that of this humbling ego. So you're constantly bouncing between the two, and that is where the disorientation comes from. I believe one of the main reasons one feels this imposter syndrome is due to some kind of a residual ego attachment. Because despite this growing awareness that life is working through you, I think the ego can still cling on to some old patterns. It's like it's trying to cling on to something that is familiar, that is known, that has worked in the past, or the methods of which it knows. So as an analogy, this stage feels like opening your closet and finding clothes from your childhood that are still sitting in the closet. But you have a very clear knowing when you look in the mirror that these clothes don't fit me anymore. Yet they were once yours. They were the only clothes you felt comfortable in back then, or even you grew up in. So the through me stage is also the stage where you begin to tap into your higher purpose, your original mission you came here for. And we all have this. We all have come here with a higher mission or a higher expression. And until then, we are stuck or caught up in a lower mission, a lower expression. And, we realize it was not about buying expensive cars or to build an empire. Nothing wrong with that. But mostly, these are to do with your lower expressions. And in this stage, you start stepping into your higher expression or higher purpose. It's not like you suddenly, it's not like a piano of wisdom suddenly falls in your head. There has always been whispers of this higher expression throughout your life. It's just very faint. It doesn't make sense while we are in a lower expression. I mean, look at me. Everything I teach is not only an experience, but it's also an organic remembering of so many things. The through me stage often brings a sense of awe and reverence for the energy that's flowing through you. And because you have remnants of your ego still floating in you, because you still have a memory of who you once were or what you once knew, which is the same as these old clothes in your closet, this can bring in fear of being unworthy or unequipped. To handle such responsibility, that is, as though you might misuse or misinterpret this power. The ego's remnants may as though insist that you need to be perfect to deserve this role. It may push you to question whether you're good enough to embody the wisdom or the energy that's coming through, creating internal tension. And that's because of how we were once wired. There is a memory in our body of how we were once wired. There's a lingering need for that external approval. And that external approval can make you question the authenticity of your experiences. When others don't validate your insights or abilities in the way you expect, you might start doubting whether you're truly aligned with the flow. But in fact, true inspiration, true creativity is so unique to you that there is nobody else in this world that can deliver it as you can. And that is where you need to be able to stand in your power without that external validation, without that external approval, and fully in trust of what's flowing through you. Many people are conditioned, to believe that greatness, creativity, or spiritual wisdom must come from extraordinary people, not from ordinary individuals like themselves. And this belief can create an internalized narrative that you're faking it. You see, we often have this idea that only enlightened individuals or miracle workers have that right. So the old egoic idea of this keeps coming in the way. The truth is, each and every one of us have these gifts, have something unique we have come here to share. It is in fact your birthright to claim these gifts. It's your birthright to tap into your inner wisdom. You see, even if I'm good at what I do, to be honest, I'm constantly lingering in this imposter syndrome. Every day I'm questioning myself, why me? Who am I to do this? Who am I to teach this? It's a strange stage to navigate through. So as much as this stage is full of its deep sense of trust in the universe and peace and joy, connectedness, compassion and love, there's also this other side to this stage. So then if we see this stage as a spectrum too, just like all the previous stages, then I'm guessing one needs to get fed up of this imposter syndrome as well. Fed up of shying away from their personal power, fed up of being on the fence, maybe just like the control state. In this stage too, there needs to be, there needs to be this sense that I'm done playing small before you start moving towards the next stage of life, which is, life's happening as me. I'll let you know if I make it that far. So, what is this as me stage? What does it look like or feel like? Well, it is said at its core, the as me stage involves a complete dissolution of the ego. And I'm sure you all would have come across this concept in the spirituality teachings that are found in many cultures. You see, the boundaries between the self and the other side needs to completely dissolve. It is as though characterized by an embodied realization that you are not separate from life. Instead, you are life itself. The world is no longer experienced as something happening to you or through you. There's no separation, but rather as you, as if an extension of your being. It's like saying, when you look at your hand, you don't look at your hand as someone else's hand. It looks like it's an extension of you. So when you reach out to do something, it becomes an expression of a complete intention of reaching out towards something. It's like you're no longer experiencer of the life or the doer of life. It's as though you are life itself. I think this stage would involve deep integration, unity, and a profound sense of oneness, perhaps even more deeper and profound than stage 3. Let's try and simplify this. Let's try and bring it down back to ground. And let's sort of look at all these 4 stages through a simple analogy of playing the piano. Let's say you're in the first stage, life's happening to me, the victim stage, and you sit in front of the piano for the first time. You're nervous, you're overwhelmed, maybe there's pressure to be a good pianist, maybe your parents are breathing down your neck, or maybe your teacher is, or whatever. So you're in this sense of overwhelm. You want to please, you want to seek approval. So then you start pressing random keys. You start learning, and initially that sounds chaotic. You feel like a victim of your inexperience. You're blaming the instrument half the time. Sometimes you blame yourself, your inability to play. Sometimes you blame the teacher, whatever it is. But this is like as though being in the victim state. Now, after several months, several years of playing piano, you've been practicing, and now you're in the second stage. You realize that with practice, discipline, and effort, you can control the piano and produce music. You start learning scales, memorizing notes, and consciously creating melodies. You're working hard to perfect your technique and achieving your goal. And this is like the control state, yeah? Because deep down, that need of validation is still there. You still believe you're trying to please people, and that is what is driving you in this second stage. So you want to control that, and you're trying to perfect your piano as an expression of that control state. And then you reach the third stage. Let's say you start surrendering control. At some stage, you start enjoying just playing the music. The act of playing transforms for you. You no longer need to think about the mechanics of playing the piano. Instead, the music just flows through you. It's become so second nature. You feel connected to something greater, a deep inspiration, or universal energy sort of is guiding your hand. You're no longer just playing notes. You're really expressing something deep within you. And many musicians feel that. They feel taken over by the muse, or they feel taken over by inspiration. And because they're so good at the instrument, because that the instrument feels so second nature, it's like you want to take it to the next level. You relax and ease in to this muse. And that's the third stage. Life's flowing through me. So then what would the final stage look like? Let's try and imagine. Imagine you and the music become almost indistinguishable. The piano is no longer an external object. It's like you are the music. You are the muse, you are the inspiration, you're also the piano, you're also the notes. You're so engrossed in that space that there's a complete dissolution of time, of the audience that are watching you, anything. It's a complete timeless, spaceless space for you, which is a complete extension of this music. So playing the piano then becomes an expression of your being, and every note feels like a natural extension of who you are. That's perhaps what is the difference with the final stage and the third stage. You might ask, really, like how can we really zoom into this difference? What really is the difference between the third and the fourth stage? Because largely they look similar. Largely there seems to be a difference of only degree of how much you surrender. And that's probably true. That's why I call it a spectrum. The spectrum of control, when you move towards the extreme end, you start to fall into, or you start to experience life as happening as me. But just for the sake of a discussion, let's say the third stage, you recognize that the music is flowing through you, but you still see yourself as a separate entity, or even a channel, or even a medium, or even a vessel, or even an organ that is creating music. So you see music as something separate from you. So there is a identity of me, the musician, and there's also this realization that this musician is playing with something called music. So in some way there's a duality. You, the musician, and the creative force, the music, and they're working together, like co-creating or partnership. So you've surrendered control, but there is still a subtle awareness of being a distinct participant in this process. You feel like a co-creator. That is, you trust the flow of music. You no longer rely on, sheer effort, but you still perceive yourself as playing the piano. The last stage, I can imagine, the boundary, let's say, between you and the music dissolves entirely. There's no longer a sense of I am playing that piano, or the music is flowing through me. Instead, maybe the experience is I am the music. There's no separation between the player, the instrument, the sound, and it's all one seamless, unified expression of life. Wow. Can you imagine that? I mean, just for the sake of, playing with this idea, try to really imagine to fully become the music, just to even experience that level of consciousness that I am the music. So as to say, you fully dissolve in this music. You have to truly drop all identity on one end and merge with the other end, merge with life, so as to say, I am life, isn't it? But if you still have these floating egoic attachments in the third stage that are driving the imposter syndrome, you can see how that's still a level of duality. There's still this separation between the music and the musician. Wow, this is so fascinating for me. It really fires me up. Frankly, from where I am, because it is not my personal experience, it seems like poetry. It seems like philosophy. It is difficult to imagine the experience of what that could feel like. But it is good for the sake of discussion. And I'll let you know if I'm blessed with this experience ever in the future. I wanted to sort of do this exercise so that I could lay out the 4 stages as a map to give you an idea of how far you can take this work. And I have personally seen myself transitioning from one stage to another. So folks, hope this episode was not too much out with the fairies. I hope this episode gave you some food for thought and a sense of how these 4 stages of growth map out the journey of expanding consciousness. And this expanding consciousness is a lived experience. The more you embrace your emotions, the more you embrace shadow work, the more you feel and release all your past traumas. So whether you're resonating with the first stage of struggle or embracing control in the second stage, surrendering to the flow in the third stage, or even glimpsing the oneness of the fourth, remember, this is a deeply personal and a non-linear path. As I mentioned earlier, I'm still navigating the through me stage myself, and it's fascinating, humbling, and sometimes messy process for me, to be honest. But even from this vantage point, it is clear that each stage builds on the last, challenging us to release what no longer serves and step more fully into our authentic power. Wherever you are on your journey, know that it's valid. You're exactly where you need to be. Growth doesn't happen all at once. It's a series of realizations, small shifts, courageous leaps. If today's discussion felt a bit abstract or even aspirational, that's okay. These ideas are just seeds then, in the meantime, and they'll bloom when the time is right. So folks, thank you for tuning in, for reflecting, and for sharing this space with me. Until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and remember, life isn't just something that happens to us. It is something we are here to experience, create, and ultimately become. See you in the next episode. Much love and take care.